Norepinephrine neurons are concentrated in the locus coeruleus in the metencephalon. This is very near the dorsolateral pons, the source for acetylcholine. Again, we have a relatively small number of cell bodies with hundreds of thousands of branches, so that norepinephrine can influence large parts of the cortex, even though there's only a small number of cell bodies. Norepinephrine is thought to be particularly important in attention and emotion. There are also descending tracks with norepinephrine to the pons and medulla, and these are thought to play an important role in the autonomic nervous system. So the source is the locus coeruleus in the metencephalon, in the pons. The target is pretty much the whole rest of the brain. We see arrows here going to the mesencephalon, the diencephalon, and of course many telencephalon structures. This is a figure from Carlson showing noradrenergic pathways in a mid-sagittal section from a rat brain. And again, we see that all of these cell bodies are concentrated in the locus coeruleus, and then projections go to many other brain regions, both ascending and descending projections. Serotonin also has a relatively small number of cell bodies with many, many, many branches. Collectively, the nuclei that contain cell bodies for serotonin are known as the Raphe nuclei. They can be further subdivided into the dorsal, ventral, and medial Raphe nuclei. We aren't going to go into that level of detail in this class, but it is important to know that Raphe nuclei are found in the midbrain, that is in the mesencephalon, in the pons, again near the dorsolateral pons and the locus coeruleus, and also in the medulla oblongata. That means that the cell bodies for serotonin are found throughout the mes, met, and myelencephalon. And as you can see from this figure, the serotonergic neurons project throughout the entire rest of the brain. Again, serotonin has many different receptors that can do a lot of different things, and because it contacts so many brain regions and can have such varied activity, it's implicated in many different functions, including sensation, emotion, regulating feeding behavior, sleep and arousal, pain, dreaming, and even aggression. So again, the source are the Raphe nuclei in the mes, met, and myelencephalon. The target is the whole rest of the brain, and there are many different functions. Carlson talks a lot about the role of serotonin and aggression, and emphasizes the impact of serotonin in the prefrontal cortex in terms of its role in aggression. Carlson and Neuroscience Online both have a lot of really nice tables summarizing drugs that act on the neurotransmitter systems we've covered. Glutamate, we mentioned NMDA, AMPA, and kainate. These are drugs that activate the receptors that are named for those drugs. So these are direct agonists for the glutamate receptors, and that's how those receptors got their names. For GABA, we mentioned that there are many indirect GABA A receptor agonists that can increase the activity of the receptor, but only in the presence of GABA itself. That's what makes them indirect rather than direct. For the acetylcholine system, we mentioned nicotine, muscarine, curare, and atropine, and those are drugs that you should be familiar with. There's a table in Neuroscience Online that also mentions atropine and physostigmine, which is another drug that we mentioned. Reserpine is an important drug because it blocks VMAT. and reserpine was initially used to treat hypertension. It was found that patients taking reserpine increased depression symptoms, and that was one of the reasons why we initially started targeting monoamine systems with antidepressant drugs. Because if blocking monoamines from entering the vesicle increased depression, maybe depression could be caused by not having enough monoamines. Another drug that we mentioned is deprenyl. This was the MAO-B inhibitor. Remember that MAO-B is specific for dopamine. Therefore, this drug can be used to treat Parkinson's symptoms. Another drug that can be used to treat the early stages of Parkinson's is L-DOPA. L-DOPA is a precursor for dopamine and therefore increases dopamine production. It is an indirect agonist for dopamine.